Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of Podcast.GG. So excited to be here with Volamel and Scr1be. Can't wait to get this going. Guys, how are you doing tonight?
Not bad. It's a nice evening. Gonna eat some late night beverages and food and here in a little bit. So yeah, I'm gonna chat on, review a little bit more of Chinese contenders and getting the festivities.
Get in the playoff spirit right there. So exactly. Drinks and pizza. That sounds about right for
drinking pizza.
Drinking
pizza.
That's
the title of this podcast.
Drinks and pizza. Podcast.gg Drinks and Pizza edition. Scr1be, what about you? How you feeling, man?
I'm feeling pretty good today. It's not often that I get to celebrate my Chinese heritage in America, so very excited to to make some great content today.
Yeah. Well, we are, speaking of great content, we're brought to you here by Broadcast.gg. We're a group of pros, semi-pro, and amateur casters, analysts, hosts, and producers, all sorts, who are all about giving you tools to, expand your own career in esports, whatever the role you choose. You can find us at Twitter at Broadcast.gg. Just like my friend KT says, though, you gotta spell out the dot. D-O-T. KT would kill me if I didn't get that, and people are actually typing dot into the Twitter handle. He would not be happy. So, yeah, definitely come check us out. We're all a loving group here. So after that, let's get into it, guys. So we are in Chinese Contenders playoff season. Isn't it wonderful? We just got off of Overwatch League, and now we are in playoffs. No, the grind never stops with us, does it?
No, if the players are playing, we got to have somebody there to tell them that they could be playing better, Yep.
I mean, the money has to go somewhere.
Right? The money does have to go somewhere.
There's some money from the Overwatch League now it's over has to disperse. At least maybe even smaller amounts, but the money has to be somewhere.
The Blizzard Bucks have to go somewhere. So we're in playoffs, and it's, we have the quarterfinals that are going to be starting this week, and we're going to just go down the list of, what these matchups are, how these teams got there, and how they played out, and, what we're going to be doing, what we might see from them. This is going to be on a new patch, so we're going to be basing most of our analysis and most of our discussion based on what we've seen so far. I mean, once the new patch and once Wrecking Ball comes in, he's going to come wreck all of our predictions probably out the window, so definitely keep that in mind as we're going through this. But, let's start it off, guys. Our first match is going to be Moss 7 Club versus Flag Gaming, and, Moss 7 Club, Volamel, I know this is one of the teams that you really like. You wrote a whole article on their Imaginarium. So, this team, how have they been so good at, being able to, their flexibility is something we really talk about, right? It's how flexible this team is. Michelle will play just random stuff, from Orisa to Tracer to Pharah. Just how does this team make that kind of flexibility work for them?
Well, like you said, they're incredibly flexible, so they're able to just adapt a lot to different situations, which I think is going to be an important kind of factor going into the playoffs because, like you mentioned, they're going to be on a new patch. There's a new environment. Even the smallest little changes in Overwatch have proved to be, meta shifts and big enough to change a bad team to a mediocre team or a bad team to an amazing team. So this is going to shake a lot of things up. And the strange thing, or the positively strange thing, don't take strange as a negative connotation here, but for Moss 7, I don't know that they're going to lose anything when it comes to a new meta because I think they're so flexible that they have shown adaptations throughout their gameplay. An important kind of example to kind of recall back to is their match with Lucky Future, especially on their Volskaya attack, where they kind of did it felt like they did their homework, where Lucky Future was trying to make a very aggressive defense, and Moss 7 kind of expected that, so they rolled out, they approached the point with a blind Bastion pick to kind of counter that threat. And it was completely blind. It's not like they went to scout and said, oh, they're running this, let me go back and swap Bastion. It was okay, let's approach with Bastion. If they meet us there, okay, cool, we'll counter them. And if they don't, we can just double back and swap off the Bastion, and it's cool. They've shown consistently that they have a level of preparation that is kind of unheard of for the most part, at least in contenders. And it's off the back of their off of the back of their flexibility. I can't necessarily give kudos to the coaching staff because we don't actually know what that situation is like for the most part. I've heard that there isn't a coach, or there's very little coaching, and it's kind of just player driven. So it would be an incredible feat to kind of have a player driven team of this caliber and to kind of expand on that. These players aren't bad by any means. They're incredibly talented. Mask has shown that he's been a little bit streaky, but very, very impressive. Jinmu's Genji has been out of this world. And then you talk about that tank line, incredible fluidity, being able to switch from Reinhardt to Zarya, or Winston to Diva. They play everything. I don't think they're going to suffer in this meta at all.
Yeah, the thing I like most, and I'll say you said flexible is your F word. For me, it's going to be fundamentals. This is the thing I like about kind of like Chinese contenders. Right? The thing I really like about them is that the top echelon of teams coming in, right? LOC, T1W. I'll even put Lingon up there if ended is having a good day. They're really strong in terms of they have the strong mechanical carry potential as well as being able to mechanically. What I do like about the kind of like the two lower seeded teams, basically the two teams that are more like dark horses here, like what I would say like it's a Hero Taciturn Panther and then Moss 7 Club both have extremely good fundamentals. So like they understand exactly how they need to play the game. The tank line of Moss 7 Club is honestly really impressing me in terms of being able to understand this is when we jump. Their mobility is used extremely well. Really efficient ultimate uses, really efficient ability uses more above everything. And more importantly, as you mentioned before, I think Mask himself is probably going to be the biggest actor here. He is going to be streaky, but that's kind of what you need, though. Like you need to be able to be Crystal. You need to be able to be Undead on their best days. You don't necessarily need to like be the one generating those picks all the time. That's like kind of like not exactly your purpose. You can honestly getting like 2 or 3 chain kills and just like snowballing off that is more than enough. And honestly, Mask is at the level where you can definitely do that. There are a lot of players in Overwatch like that. No matter how hard they try, even if they have high consistency, they're not going to be able to hit those 3-4 nutty shots. Yeah. I think Mask is that guy. Jinmu honestly is being able to play Genji pretty well, even in like a meta where very, very impressive to play against. There's a hard counter immediately available to Swiss that's pretty strong right now. So it's like, why play Genji at all? But one thing I do like, Moss 7 Club knows how to play the win conditions. They're extremely smart. I expect them to actually throw a pretty big curveball at anyone they play, and that's going to be the big thing here. Their flexibility, as you mentioned before, from one point, I like their fundamentals. I think they're a really solid team. I don't really see them being a very easy walkover for anyone. I think that a lot of teams might be sleeping on them just a little bit, and one slip out can mean, the end of your playoff dreams.
And I think that's okay. Go ahead, Volamel. Sorry.
Another one thing I wanted to kind of touch on there that I think Scr1be brought up was the fact that you have to have either that kind of level of kind of not star player, but that level of potential to kind of combat other teams. And I think that in this potential meta, that we're going into, I think the hit scan role is going to be a role that you're going to need to excel at. Somebody on your team has to excel at it, whether it's Undead, whether it's Mask. For Moss 7, they have that level of capability where they can compete with those other teams. If obviously Mask has has a good day, they have all the pieces. If we're kind of to understand the meta for the most part, to be able to go in and compete against some of the best, we'll end up seeing. We'll see if they can compete with the best, but I think they should have a fairly easy time.
I mean, yeah, we talked about kind of like how like the China overall is kind of like a very DPS heavy driven region, and when Mask is there and Mask is like having those pop off moments, Jinmu when on that Genji, because it's a lot of Widow Genji that we've been seeing currently in this meta, right? And it's like when Mask is taking a lot of that pressure off, Jinmu seems very, very comfortable just to play Genji and just get into the back line. So they do a good job of, understanding that there's two, right? It's the rule of two. There's always 2 DPS. And if one of them is like taking all of the pressure off of you for Jinmu, it's on that other DPS to kind of capitalize on that, right? Because there are teams that we've seen where it's just Widow, like Undead is just, if we kill Undead, like what's Kami gonna do, right? Kami is like has sometimes not had that ability to have that pseudo carry potential like the second carry potential, right? It's kind of like you need your Luigi to your Mario, you need your Pippin to your 100%. Jordan, right? You need that other player, and I think Jinmu has shown throughout the season that he has those flashes of being able to be that player to kind of ease the load off of Mask's back.
Well, it's not just about having the 2 DPS. I think, this meta in particular throughout the regular season, you started to see kind of I think Scr1be kind of coined this term, especially transitioning in Overwatch, that kind of feed the puppy mentality where it's like, okay, we're just going to protect our Widow. We're just going to protect our Hanzo. And I think that's kind of been a little bit more prevalent as the season has continued, where it's like, okay, Jinmu, you're on certain maps, mind you, we're gonna put you on Brig, and you're just gonna kind of guard Mask, or you're just gonna guard Undead. Will that continue? It's difficult to say, but to kind of touch on your point, it is about having 2 DPS, but it's about having that kind of secondary DPS able to flex off and take less of like a spotlight, less of a star role, and be able to you kind of, you know, be that Scottie Pippen and pass the ball to that star player and let him shine. So yeah, I think it's important to kind of delve more into that dichotomy.
Yeah.
This meta change actually is fairly interesting. I just remembered something. May no longer has a drop off.
Oh,
right?
that's gonna be. Oh, that's actually.
But this is
that's the Moss 7 Club special right there.
Jinmu, the boy Jinmu himself, on King's Row 3rd, will play that character because let's not say I love May. I think May is so undertapped. I think that having a wall that forms anywhere on the map is insane.
It's
like,
so much value.
Yeah.
Like what? Like who thought this was a good idea? Like we're just gonna get. But this is what I think. Having that drop off damage removed, you know he's gonna play it on 3rd. And all of a sudden, your tanks are no longer being able to steamroll, right? This is the big thing that many people don't talk about. It divides the fight more effectively. And especially running against triple tank compositions where they kind of require everyone to be on the same page, you separate the Ryan, you separate the Zarya, you separate anyone, even just separating the 3-on-3 where there's just 3 tanks ahead, especially on that last corner of King's Row where you have to either run through a choke point or go through that big open space, and it also allows the defense to get in flank positions. I think that's huge. I think that's one of the things that we don't think about Moss have been doing, and now you have an added lethality to that hero. I think that's ridiculous.
Yeah,
Make her
it's
a sniper.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, just make her a sniper, right? That who's gonna count? Now you don't need like the Widow 1v1. It's just the Mei versus the Widow right now, and just the Mei. I mean, we've seen like Jonak in Overwatch League, right? He came out on Mei once and was just like pop, headshot after headshot. But we've kind of been talking about Moss 7 a lot. Let's kind of move over to Flag Gaming, who, I mean, they've had a little bit of a rough go in these, you know, past group and you know, the Group A. They come from Group A where it's a very top heavy group, and they're kind of like the 1 out of 3 that didn't, you know, that managed to get up above into that 4th spot. And they did recently add Jason, which, you know, during the season we talked about as being one of those things that's like, and we saw him play. He played very, very well. And as we're talking about like the 2 DPS duos, do you think Jason, I think it's Jason and DMO, do you think they're a good enough duo to kind of like go up against the duo of Mask and Jinmu?
I think so. If you're just gonna put like paper to paper, like just stat sheets at me, I think they probably are. Evilex hasn't even really been that bad in my opinion. I think the little bit that we've seen of him has been, you know, fairly okay. I'd like to see more to kind of give a better opinion on him in particular. My kind of worry with them is their tank and supports, because depending on which patch we get, because there is kind of a little bit of contention there exactly how far ahead Blizzard's kind of pushing these patches, it could change up more than what we're understanding. So we don't have that official confirmation if we're getting like the support changes or if it's just like Hammond, Symmetra, and the DPS or the hit scan fall off. So it's kind of in flux. But it depends. But even if it's the latter of the two, where, you know, it's just Hammond and Symmetra, I wonder if that's going to change the tank dichotomy enough that it's going to put pressure on Melons and Over to a degree that it's just going to kind of leave them without any space, where it's like, okay, yeah, Jason, Land Boss, DMO, Evilex, they're really, really good, but if you don't have any space, then, you know, you have no room to be able to work within, and you're just kind of running in willy-nilly. Granted, you know, at times, you know, Chinese contenders can have that very aggressive tendency. That's just not a good way to kind of play the game. It's not something you want to kind of practice. So it's gonna throw them off, I think. But we'll see. It's a lot of what ifs for them, but I think it's less about the DPS and more of can the tanks and the supports, 2 of the biggest factors I think in most teams, can they continue, can they adapt quick enough, or are they going to be able to be, you know, as strong as they have been in coming into the playoffs?
That's gonna be tough. I think.
I agree. It's not gonna be easy for him.
No, not at all.
It's not gonna be Sid's side. But I think talking about like their tank line, Lai is someone who I think has to be pivotal. I mean, we talked about Diva just being like huge centerpiece to a lot of different competitions, and China's kind of one of those regions where Diva play is, I think it's very exceptional, just because of how well staged a lot of these fights start off, but also like a lot of these. This is what I'll say. I think that China has a tendency for the DPS players to go more so on solo streaks. I think that basically abandoning that area forces Divas to cover a lot more ground, right? Because, for example, even communication in terms of, hey, can you DM me at this moment, right? I fucked up. Sorry. Oh, I messed up that dive, right? I messed up that. Can you come in and make sure I don't die, right? And I think that communication is important, but more so like the enemy tank gods are going to play super aggressive as well, and they're going to play hyper aggressive on you. They recognize that your DPS isn't really doing damage, so they're not scared. The moment that there's no damage remaining, and they kind of like are centered on like, okay, like we're not dying, our shields aren't going down, let's just push ahead. I think you immediately have to react there. I see there's so many instances where sometimes a Chinese DPS player will go flank, and then his team just gets engaged on it, and he does maybe like 1 or 2 kills in the back.
Yeah,
that happens enough. So it's like, for me, my worry about this is basically Flag Gaming needs to kind of shift their dependence. They need to make sure that Jason has to get those resources in order to start popping up. But DMO himself, he can't play nearly as aggressive, and more importantly, I think Lai and Over, they're going to be the big chopping blocks here. I think Lai has so much more responsibility, and he's going to be pressured. I think that Moss Evans is going to 100% pressure him.
You bring up a good point, especially when you talk about like the DPS players going on these very long flanks. That's exactly what we've seen from Jason, especially on Genji. Yeah. I can bring up, multiple issues on King's Row where he's just going these massive flanks, and they dive really well together. But it's, to bring up Scr1be's F word, it's the fundamentals. It's, keeping that positioning tight. If you want to go for those D flanks, that's fine, but you have to make sure that you have some sort of advantage elsewhere. So if you go on a deep flank, do you have a support advantage? Do you think at least you have a support advantage? I know it's a little bit difficult to kind of track these ults, but those are the things that's going to push you deeper into the playoffs than these other teams. It's that little edge up that you have over these teams. So it's positioning, it's about those fundamentals. That's what's going to make the difference here when it comes for Flag Gaming. Keeping your Devo, in range of being able to blanket other people, to be able to dive aggressively if need be, if there's an opportunity. That's the question that Flag has to answer. And if they can, it could be closer. But if they can't, I think Moss 7 is probably going to just outflex them. They're going to throw curveballs. They're going to throw, just standard fast, just a fast ball. They've got a lot of change up to them. I don't see Flag in that same vein have that kind of breadth of gameplay.
And when you're going up against like curveballs like that, you kind of, it's okay to sometimes have that mentality of like, oh, I can maybe get a flank in like 1v6, but if you're going up against like a complete curveball, like they're bringing out like this Bastion comp that they're we talked about on Volskaya 1, that's a moment where you need to be completely coordinated as a team, right? That you can't have Jason like just somewhere else on the map trying to get kills. No, you need to all like understand the only way that we beat this is if we beat this together and we're all coordinated. So that's something that I worry about for Flag, is just their ability to coordinate to beat Moss 7, because we've seen sometimes with Moss 7 Club, if the other team against them is coordinated enough to counter what they're doing, then it kind of just falls apart a little bit for them, because they can get downloaded slightly. I don't know if Flag has the capability to do that, really, to just kind of just meld together as a team to deal with what Moss 7 Club is going to bring to the table.
Yeah, so I do want to give you guys a hypothetical, because this is something I was just thinking about a little more. Let's say hypothetically, right, Moss 7's big answer here, right, and this is going to be the big matchup, I think, is going to be the Jason versus Mask matchup. If Mask starts winning that matchup hardcore, and I mean like basically like, hard tilt, like Jason just never touches Widow again. And let's say DMO is also going to shut down, because this is kind of the thing, right? What compositions are we going to really see a lot more of? I still don't think dive is the immediate answer, and this is what I was wondering more so, is like, compositionally wise in this meta, if you don't win these initial like hard carry duels, do you have to go dive, or is there another answer? Because I feel like sometimes like if you like funnel in on dive too much, you put DMO on that Genji, I feel you're limiting yourself so much. I don't think DMO doesn't get as much room. Do you still play dive, or do you do like a weird hybrid where maybe you don't even run Zarya, you do like Rein Diva?
It's so hard, because like whenever you're in that like Widow mentality, Widow 1v1 mentality, especially in China, I feel like it's almost imperative that you keep that Widow, because you're one of, if not the only things that's able to counter the other Widow, right? So you have to continuously think to yourself, okay, I can get the next shot. Even if you're losing like as bad as it is, you can't switch full dive, because then then they're going to just switch over to like they go to like, if they have double sniper, for instance, right? Then Hanzo's just going to melt your team as soon as you get close. So I think it's like a catch-22, right? It's like you either switch full dive or you lose completely the Widow 1v1 battle and just give up and give Mask the opportunity to just completely free farm your team, and he can get picks like off the bat left and right. So I think it's a very difficult situation for to decide what you want to do there.
I agree that having matching heroes is probably the best way to counter another hero for the most part. Like if I just have a Widow in particular, she checks angles very, very well. If there was one point in a recent VOD review that I did with Team CC and LGD where I think it was LGD actually scouted 2/3 of the map and cleared 2/3 and said there's no Widow here, so that only means that Widow can be in the last third of the map, and they just completely spaced on it. And it was partly due to the fact that they were checking with where their Widow was checking, if that makes sense. So they were just like double checking one kind of half of the map and not really paying attention to the other half where like the threat was. And while I agree with you, right? Like Widow does a great job checking other Widows, whether it's actually fighting against them or just pressuring certain angles where they know that like, okay, I can't, constantly just grapple shot because I could just get shot out. I can't do certain things because there's an enemy Widow that could just be looking at me, or there's walls up or stuff like that. Now, because we know that we are getting Hammond, I wonder if having a composition that's kind of like 3 tank Winston D.Va Hammond dive, if that's a little bit more mobility and a little bit more sticky kind of tanky pressure, that you can kind of force a lot of movement from a Widowmaker that's going to make her either less good or just make her a lot more defensive in a sense where she can't take a lot of just very peaky shots. She has to play very, very tight around her grapple shot. I wonder if that's something that teams are practicing. Can Widows adapt to that massive amount of pressure that their team is actually going to have to cover for as well? It's a what if question, but yeah, it's fun to think about, right? It's fun to kind of theory craft and ponder.
It's fun to ponder. That's kind of what we're here for. So let's segue off. You were mentioning Team CC. They're actually the next matchup we have. So they're going to be facing, I believe it's going to be T1W Esports Club. So a closer match, I would say, between these two than what we're going to probably see from Moss 7 Club versus Flag Gaming.
Yeah, probably.
But so Team CC, Shanghai Dragons Academy team. There's a lot of kind of pressure, I want to say there. It's like they're the academy team. They should be here. It's kind of like they should be here, even though they took a little bit of a long way to get here. They should definitely be in the playoffs here. And T1W, interesting team. It's kind of like Group A. It's very like T1W has lost to Lingon and Lucky Future Zenith, but they've beaten everyone under them. And it's kind of like that with like. It's kind of that like, do we know how good T1W is? Because T1W is the only team this season to take a map off of Lucky Future Zenith. No other team has taken a map off of them, so they definitely have that going for them. But I'm interested to see how you guys think, T1W is going to be facing off against Team CC.
My boy, Molan Ron, dude.
Molan Ron.
This guy's actually insane. Like
his Pharah is nuts. Like actually.
But this is what I'll say. I overrate this guy because I think this guy is like, he's either the smartest person in the world or he's like the kind of guy like that like just says, oh, this will work, I'll do this, and then your team is just like, all right, like I don't know, dude, like you're not playing fair, so
we'll
like,
build around you.
We're basically carrying you anyway, so just go do your thing, and he gets like 2 kills. It's like, oh, that's insane. I think that T1W has the ability, I think, to just completely just one side dominate this game. I think that Crystal is someone who I like watching a lot. I think has extremely high potential, but the amount of room and respect that he's going to receive is going to be huge. I think Molaron, if he's able to, use that attention that Crystal's going to get, because this meta, especially since let's say his scan changes do go through, right? Yeah. Crystal's lethal. Like it's just like you don't want to see that McCree either. Like now you don't want to see Soldier either. He does run both at times. Molaron also now has like the ability to potentially run a Soldier. I don't know if he does. He's run Sombra, he runs Tracer already. We've seen that run on top of the Pharah. I think if he gets enough attention, he's able to space correctly, I think he could definitely take over his game. I think that Pharah is one of these heroes that even if you have like a large hit scan presence, I don't know if you're willing to commit that many resources to that. Because there's a possibility he just does nothing entire game. And you just wasted. You spent the entire game looking at him and you did nothing, right? While you were looking at him, Crystal went and stole your girl. Like that's about it. But I think that in those situations where he's able to get room, he's able to do something a little innovative, maybe add a little bit of that spice to the equation. I think he's gonna pop off, and this is like I think what T1W is really hoping
And you mentioned innovation there, and while we talk about Moss 7 Club and they're so crazy, they've got fluid tanks and their DPS can play everything under the sun, and they've got Mei strats and Bastion strats. That's cool. But have you ever seen a team run 4 DPS and 2 supports before? Because T1W does that
did
constantly
on Oasis, yeah.
And that's something that is, I feel like, as a branch strategy from like the triple DPS kind of Korean style, specifically on City Center, where you put your soldier on the high ground and there's just enough pressure that you can kind of out damage their healing. But it's about their kind of unorthodox style that's very similar to Moss 7 that I think, again, this team could have a great potential leading into like a new meta where they're cool with playing very, different styles, and they can play all kinds of different stuff. So they're comfortable in that scenario where they don't have to have very rigid strategies. They're fun, they're creative, they can do those different things. And I love exactly what you're saying when it came to Crystal, because when we look at China historically, specifically in Overwatch, they're very hit scan favored. You look at Undead, you look at Dia, those are even some other Shanghai players. They're very keen to just default to McCree. Like when in doubt, we'll just safe.
Undead does that a lot. Yeah, Undead.
Exactly. So if that's going to be a more meta situation and a more meta pick, you could see Crystal bring that out. You could see like a double hit scan meta start to develop. And I think that T1W actually has a great foot forward if that's going to be the case, where you could run Crystal on all of the hit scan and he'd probably be pretty good. I'm sure Molanron can at least play soldier. And in that scenario, you have the pieces to move forward. They've got a good tank line. They've got good supports. I think Silver 3, hopefully I'm not. Yes, Silver 3 and Unhappy. I've heard very, very good things. They've looked very tight when I've watched and seen a little bit of their play. They dive well. They protect their backline pretty well. Everything looks green for T1W, while Team CC looks
Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Shady. Yeah, not the most consistent team in the world for pretty obvious reasons, I'd say.
So I mean, Team CC lost to Lucky Future Zenith, or Lucky Future rather. Lucky Future Zenith would be a good loss. They lost to Lucky Future, and Lucky Future is not a loss that you probably want to have on your record, because Lucky Future has just been kind of like a mess this entire season, just with how they've been playing, and they didn't make playoffs as well. So you see Team CC have these pretty good wins, but then you see like that like one blip against like Lucky Future, and you're like, is this like actually a team that's going to be able to go far? Because that's like such a horrible loss. And we've seen, talking about like, Hitscan, K-Hearts, he's an acceptable Widow. I think there have been moments where he's very streaky, which is like the one thing I would say. He's incredibly streaky, which is kind of the MO of a lot of these Chinese Widows, but boy, is he really, really streaky. Like, there can't be, there's like times where he's like popping off, he's getting like 3K, 2K headshots, and then there's times where he just doesn't even play the game. It's a 5v6. So I feel like T1W, because we've seen Crystal play more consistently, even in their losses, right? Even when they're losing, Crystal seems to kind of have, the ability to always have that opportunity to kind of, carry his team. Whereas the highs for K-Heart are pretty high, but the lows for K-Heart are very, very low. From what I've
got to talk about my boy Yakumo as well.
Yakumo also, like, I mean, it's kind of like Scotty and Jordan. Like, it's kind of like we're thinking about like these two players and like how they're going to be matching up with each other. And Assassin and Molanran have had, I don't know if we've seen Assassin too much, but Molanran definitely has that kind of carry potential, especially when he plays Pharah, or as Scr1be mentioned, it's the rest of his team carrying him, and they're just like whatever, dude, just play whatever you want. You're gonna go off on your own. We'll play our game, and then that'll happen. But I think Yakumo also kind of has this like it's just, I think the MO for Team CC is just complete inconsistency. Like just in general, I think that's their MO throughout the entire season with their results, with their play. It just doesn't. Sometimes they look like world beaters, like they beat LGD in the last game, and then they lose to Lucky Future. Like, it's just completely Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. So it depends on which one of those two is going to show up. Are they going to show up as Dr. Jekyll or show up as Mr. Hyde? And that's probably going to be about 50% of like how that game is going to go, I feel.
Team CC is like honestly kind of a disappointment. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. Like, there was a time where I thought, Miraculous Youngster could be the best team.
Yeah.
Well, a top 3 team in the world. Then I watched Young play, and it's like like you can't like was this what we were bringing? Like I was glad we got Shanghai Dragon. You know, like,
hey, you're getting another one. You're getting I don't Guangzhou.
Yeah, dude, we're getting Guangzhou. I'm excited because I can't wait to get an all Korean Chinese team.
Just get Lucky Future Zenith and just plug them in, dude.
Yeah, I mean, these tank lines have kind of been like a combination of this. Like, I mean, I wanna expect right. I think they can. But Chichiren and Lei Young are gonna have the worst time of their lives. You can see. I think Silver and Unhappy are just phenomenal. I think they're gonna expose them a little bit. I think this is kind of like a thing where you look at Team CC and you go like, you know, like you guys are like Overwatch academies, but you know we're gonna drop you guys. We're picking up the T1W roster, boys. Like I can see that happening, but
get them out of here.
I'm wondering like how like do you like Volamel, do you think they can bring it like this place? Like the more I watch them play and the more I kind of like get worried like. I don't want to like see them. This is a strong team. I think this team has a lot of potential to do well. It's just that I just don't think we hyped up these things. These were like people were hyping up.
Sure, yeah.
For the longest time.
I remember in our story meeting, we were like, Team CC, that's a good team. That team
is a good team. It has so many great parts. But like, do you think this is like a better reflection of them, or do you feel like it's a little bit of missed synergy here, or is it something?
No, I think it's completely missed synergy when you look at the tank line between Lei Young and Jachirin. They just don't really. It's either they don't work well together anymore because they did come from that MY background, which is strange, and I don't think that's the case. But when you apply kind of Occam's razor to this, and you kind of look at the most like the easiest scenario, I just don't think they play. It feels like there's a communication gap between the front line and the rest of their team where they're playing super far forward or, Late Young's just kind of out, kind of holding an angle where his team's still trying to respawn or just, reinforcing the point or just kind of reinforcing like a King's Road defense. And he just gets demeched for very little reason whatsoever, where he's trying to contest someone or try to threaten a duel. And he just gets popped because he's not kind of accounting for who else could be there. A Junkrat comes out, it's like, oh crap, well now there's a Junkrat, I don't have D Matrix, and I get popped, and my team's like, well now it's a 5.5 v6, and obviously simple math, quick maths, it's not what you want, right? So it is that disconnect between the front and the back where their support lines, I can't say too much about them. They're fine. They don't surprise me. I think Kyo at times has some good pop-off performances on Zen. Will we see Zen next meta? Hard to say. If we do, they have some good foundation, but when everything kind of comes together, Late Young doesn't look great on anything but Zarya. Zijin comes in, looks great on Diva, but does he have the Zarya, especially with the map pool? It's questionable, so there's going to be a lot of flexing off of that. And if we're kind of to understand how some of the OWL teams kind of participate and talk about their swaps and their substitutions, it takes a good couple minutes for everybody to kind of coalesce and kind of adapt with that substitution. So I can't imagine that an academy team in Contenders doesn't have those same issues. And then you look at the DPS line. I think K-Heart's fine. I think he's a fairly decent Widow. He's got a good hit scan. I'm sure he can have, stand-up performances on McCree if that becomes very prevalent. And then there's Yakumo. He looks better when he's playing Brig. Like they've started to incorporate Brig into that composition a little bit more. But outside of that, it's a little rough. It's very spotty from him. His Genji at times can be very headstrong, very optimistic, a little bit greedy, where he's like, oh, 3 or 4v6, time to pop Blade.
Gets no one.
Exactly. Or tries to jump in with Barrage, and it's really not trading effectively. So it's a lot of things going wrong for Team CC, but the good, I guess, if you're going to take a silver lining from that statement, they at least know what they can work on, and maybe they have that time to kind of turn it around. But you're facing a team that has a very clear game plan. They've done very well so far. Like you said, they've done very well against what could be the best team in the league. It's going to be a tough ask for me to say that Team C does incredibly well here, but patches are patches. Things happen, so it's not out of the realm. I'd say like 65-35 T1W, but that doesn't mean that Team CC can't, roll the 35 there.
Yeah. And speaking, go ahead.
So one
more thing.
Yeah, I mean, I was actually going to review that because we talked about how he sometimes pulls blades in like an opportunity situation, and this happens with a lot of Chinese teams. I feel they all when they're
off cooldown.
They recognize, exactly. They recognize how strong their ultimates are. And they recognize that the game there's a potential game changing like situation where you wipe 3. And I wonder if that's actually something that I want Yakuma to do a little more against T1W. T1W is going to apply a lot of pressure to their tanks, but if you kind of force them to respect that it's going to come out, where they can't guarantee that, like, man, if we go too deep here, like Yakuma is just going to come out of nowhere. Like barrage our backline. Like, there's no reason why. It seems like already like 2 people are dead. They're backing off. He just comes out of nowhere and turns that fight. I wonder if that's something that's going to shift C1W off. Because C1W, I think, has a very specific game plan. I think Mo Lanran specifically has very specific game plans that he operates on. I think that he's not someone who he's not like random, but when he does something, like even if it's weird, he kind of has a purpose. He's like, I'm going to time this with this other movement here. But if you can disrupt that, if you can kind of like put him on the back foot, when all of a sudden Crystal has to start thinking like, man, I can't focus on this 1v1. I have to make sure that, like, I'm not getting flanked by Yakuma.
Yeah,
I wonder if that gives them the tanks the room that they need to kind of push forward and operate.
No, yeah, I like that a lot. Kind of throw down the gauntlet and really contest them. Don't try to conform to whatever kind of play style that T1W is going to be forcing on you. No, I think that's a good way that Team CC could squeak in some momentum and maybe potentially ride that into the semifinals. That's definitely a way they could do it. I think that's pretty astute.
Bring out the big guns for the. I mean, that's all you got though. That's the last game you
basically
win, you so you bring out everything. I mean, Yakumo just go in with Dragon Blade all the time. Just focus completely on Crystal and just Dragon Blade him every time you see him, and then get him out of the fight. But speaking of the best team in the league, Lucky Future Zenith is next, and Lucky Future Zenith is taking on Hero Task Turned Panther. And Lucky Future Zenith, boy, they lost one map to T1W, as you mentioned before. But besides that, it's looked pretty good for them. Smooth sailing, 19-1 record, 5-0 in their group. Can anyone stop this team? Because this team is stacked pretty much to the brim. They now have Yarg as well, so you're basically rotating between DM, Ursa, and Yarg right now, who's coming over from Lucky Future. So you have that 3-headed dragon of attack, and then you have Michelle, IDK, Marvel, Lucid, just like all of these good tanks. Like, how is Hero Task Turned Panther going to be able to deal with the beast that is Lucky Future Zenith? If they can at all, like, is there a possibility?
It's a tough answer. When you look at how not only mechanically dominant LFC has been, but even their coordination on their dives, being able to squeak out as much ultimate usage as they can. I've actually been fairly impressed with someone who we haven't, seen a ton of in the past. We've seen a little bit from Marvel in the past. I think he subbed for Metathena for a couple of maps in some like online cups, but his understanding of specifically Primal has been pretty good. I think that he's had a couple like very like showboaty plays almost, where it's like, should you be diving a Mercy off the map with your Primal Rage? Maybe not, but it looked really cool, and it shows that you've got that level of understanding that has a mark of a top player, I think. But when it comes to HTP, I think their style could fit the meta pretty well because they're very deathball-y. If by chance it ends up being like a three tank dive scenario where it's like Winston, Diva, Hammond diving a specific point, that kind of still feels to me like a little bit of a death ball. So it could play in HTP's hands. They've got some very cute set plays. I think they were the team that ended up, capturing a Genji in the Volskaya B closet and just kind of keeping him in there, and then using self-destruct and like wiped like half their team. Like it was like these cute little set plays. They throw Diva Bomb into odd scenarios. Like they've got threats. I just don't know if those threats will be able to transition into this next patch. But it's difficult to say that that's gonna catch Lucky Future Zenith off guard. Like they've got coaching staff out the wazoo. they look to be pretty prepared in every single match they've played throughout the regular season. I wouldn't be surprised if they're not prepared for any cute tricks that HTP's got for them.
This match actually, if there is going to be one upset that happens, I do think this could be it.
Really?
It's like this is what I'm saying.
Okay. Let's hear it.
It's bold. I'm interested.
Okay, now you've got my ears at attention. I want to hear now. I want to hear how you think HTP is gonna end up upsetting this.
Well, let me tell you. I think that for Chinese teams, I think Shanghai Dragons going 0-30 has to be said. It has to be written somewhere that they have to go 0-30. I think that the Guangzhou team of Lucky Future Zenith is going to continue the plot line, and they're going to go. Well, I think, but okay. All kidding aside, I do think that it would be funny if this team does lose, and it really gets picked up by Guangzhou. They're like, they have the formula together. They know what to do. Choke every game.
Yeah, we could go an LW and they just drop out. We're gonna I gotta go practice.
We're gonna get two. China's gonna get 2 0-40 teams. Just be ready for it.
But no, I think that HCP. I don't know. I want to say that yes, this would be the upset that happens because I feel like maybe Lucky Future Sense isn't even looking at this game that closely.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. I want to say maybe it is an issue, right? Like sometimes that Korean teams have shown us they don't necessarily prep immediately for the next game. And I think this is one of the matchups where I don't think they need to prep as much. I think this is a game where you can kind of go in pretty static and you can definitely turn out victories. I don't think there's a lot of talent on the side of ACP that can beat the mechanical willpower of LFC. But my big issue here is that there's no prep. I think if ACP rolls out with a lot of really good set plays and they abuse certain things, because like this is what I'll say is like assault maps is literally one set play away from being like a one game.
Yeah.
And I think that if they do set up and they do kind of showcase that very specific set play style against Korean teams, especially, which I think also operate a little more on kind of like reacting to certain situations and set plays. If you can kind of predict what they're going to do. Because I don't think that LOC is going to do anything like very like crazy. I think that they are going to play aggressive. I think you can anticipate it coming. If ACP spends a lot of time preparing for this matchup and they drop specific set plays that are going to catch out specific like avenues of this team, I want to see that, for example, punishing Marvel a little more, right? Catching out DM or Urster, right? Specifically one or the other, and just try to like take that advantage with you. I think this could be a very troubling matchup because it's something where Assault I think can go either way. Control, I'm pretty sure is pretty one-sided here, but at the same time, there's a lot of swing here, and that's one thing I would be a little worried about.
I think there's one person like on HTP that can match DM's Widow. And I think the only person is Lily, because what they do, Lily is basically their Widow, like super sub Widow. They would always bring him in during these last maps, put him on Gibraltar, put him on these assault maps, and then they'd be like, okay, so. Or escort maps rather. They put him on escort maps and be like, okay, Lily, just win the Widow battle and then just pop off, because every Widow he's gone up against so far this season, he's managed to get the upper hand at least once or twice during those battles. Even if the team didn't win, it's definitely looking a lot better that when when Wooly Gao is in the map. When Wooly Gao is in the map, it's like not as good. But when it's Lily is like the one person who I think if can beat DM in the Widow battle, because DM has had issues in the Widow battle before, not because he's still really good, but like when he faced DMO, like DMO versus DM was a rather close Widow battle, and I think Lily has the capability to kind of match DM or beat him in that Widow battle. And as we mentioned before, Widow, maybe not in the next patch, but in what we've seen so far, Widow's a very important part. So I think Lily, if they decide to keep him in most of the time, which is up to them, I don't know, they bring him in super sub sometimes and they start someone else, but I think that's the one player that I would definitely look out for to like be this kind of like saving grace for HTP.
No, for sure. Another thing that I would kind of touch on is their diva Ink.
Not Pink, Ink.
Not
Pink,
yes.
Ink.
Just
shout out to Vals. Shout out to Vals. I mean, sorry. Shout out to Blank. I'm sorry, I missed his name.
Fair. He's found a lot of use of Diva Bomb, and it's to the level that I'm like, this looks better than some of even the Overwatch League. Like the lower half of the Overwatch League teams, I'm like, okay, in a couple of these matches, you're getting a lot of different avenues of pressure here. You're not only denying point, you're remacking, but you're also like getting kills with it. You're either know where people tend to be, or you're very familiar with how these specific players want to position or how this composition positions, I think if he continues and if D.Va is, in the meta next patch, he's going to bring a lot of value with that ultimate. Whereas, there are a lot of teams that just kind of struggle to find value at that ultimate and use it in a very kind of throwaway fashion, where I think HTP do really well around D.Va Bomb. They play around it really well. So if I think it's to touch on what Scr1be said as well, it's about kind of building momentum on maps that aren't control, because it's going to be very difficult for them to be able to brawl as well as LFZ tends to, just based on pure mechanics. So if they can start to win an early map that isn't control and really start to not get emotional, but I think if you are going to get emotional, that should be the map to kind of really big up your momentum, big up your confidence that you can beat the best team in the league and continue rolling from there. It's a possibility, new patch, things happen. I would be shocked. Let's face it. I would be shocked if they end up. But
it'd be probably the biggest upset, maybe of contenders.
At least this
possibly
season. Possibly.
So
it's a hard ask, but it's a possibility. I don't think when you have a situation like this where nobody's really that prepared, you don't have a ton of official matches. I don't think I can be. I don't think I could weight anybody outside of like 20%. So it feels like a 70-30 for me, where it's like LFC should be the clear favorites, but because of the situation and the lay of the land, there's room for upsets because of just how the patch is laying out. So it could happen.
It could happen. So going into our last game, we have another Chinese team kill. We have LGT versus Lingon Esports, who Lingon, you spelled it wrong. We have shirts now, actually, if you want to learn how to spell it correctly. We have the correct spelling, but LGD versus Lingon Esports. So Lingon Esports, as we know, kind of this team where it's like, hey, Undead is on our team. Let's just have Undead carry us. And if he doesn't, what can you do? And then we have LGD, who was second place, I believe, last season contenders in the finals. Close. I think it was a 5-game set. And, kind of like this super team. I want to say they're just a very good team. Just a very super team. I don't know. Super team might be going too far, but they definitely have their place in, Chinese contenders. That's
sure. Yeah. They're contenders viable. They're definitely, contenders for the Overwatch League, without a doubt. They belong here. They're not a relegation team. This one,
they are also kind of inconsistent a little bit.
Yeah, they feel like the top end of Team CC to me, where it's like they look like Team CC on a very, very good day at times, and then on the back end, it's like, what's happening here? And I think a lot of it ends up coming from their support line. I've been pretty public around how not much of a fan I am of Only Wish's positioning on Mercy.
That's a good way to put it. I like that.
But depending on what happens, maybe we can get maybe it's a slight buff to LGD that Only Wish doesn't have to play Mercy anymore, and he can play other things, and maybe he's better at those things. So it's definitely potential there. Another thing, LGD very, very frontline, kind of focused, right? Where in that sense, it's like, yes, their tanks are very good, but it's also in the sense kind of talking about their DPS as well, where Eileen kind of is a frontliner for me. He plays like a tank without playing tanks, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So if Hammond just happens to be really, really strong and in China values him really highly, I could see Eileen picking him up very, very well. It fits his playstyle. He kind of feels like a D.Va if D.Va was a lot squishier and did more damage. So Eileen could kind of fill that role really well, and then keep shy on Widow, please. Maybe McCree. let the 6 gear shift, man. Let it rock. He'll bring you out of all the holes. He's the escape rope of LGD, getting you all out of those caves and all that stuff. So yeah, LGD definitely a team that I'm a big fan of. But can they stop Undead and the Funky Bunch? I don't think so.
It's scary. It really is scary to think that Undead, he shouldn't be here. Let's be honest. He should be taking care of his kid. That's what he should be doing.
Yeah.
Family values here.
Family values.
But this is what I'll say, right? McCree coming back could be a big thing.
That could be.
We talked about how reliant in some ways he is. We've seen how strong he is on this show. And Undead being like raise a puppy for Undead on McCree is going to be insane because this is something we don't really talk about. McCree is kind of like has the mobility to, in a way, really take over a game in ways that Widow cannot. I think that the ability to kind of move forward more effectively, have a really strong CC ability that both helps out your tanks as well as provides like a kind of like a barrier for enemy teams to kind of like rush it. Right? Because if you flashbang Monkey, if you flashbang any of Diver and ban the hammer, a lot of damage is getting done here.
Mm-hmm.
I think that your tanks have a lot easier of a target to go in on. But more importantly, I think that if you're running like a Reinhardt, if you're finding ways to negate that Widow presence and keep that McCree alive, I think all of a sudden this becomes very scary. I think that the scariest thing everyone to see as a Widow is seeing Undead on McCree behind a Reinhardt shield rolling up to you because you're just like, well, he could shoot me like twice, I'm just dead, and there's nothing I can do here. And I think that's something that really worries me is that Undead could do that and pop off. I don't know if Shy has the same like level of that, but I wonder if LGD will be willing to commit as many resources.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen Undead whenever like he played. You know, I remember on like Li Jiang, he's playing Widow, and then he's like, okay, I'm done playing Widow. I'm just gonna switch to McCree, and then he manages to clutch it out. And we've seen Shy kind of stay a little bit towards the Widow, like the Widow Tracer. I think is where he hasn't played McCree that much. So if it is gonna be like Undead being on this McCree, and like Shy can't play, I don't think Shy is gonna be able. I think Undead is going to be able to beat Shy's Tracer because I think Undead is just that good and comfortable on McCree that I think he's just going to flashbang dead. That character's gone. And then they might want to put like Brigitte too. So then that's going to force Shy over to something like the Widow, which if Undead is playing McCree, like Undead just really likes that character and just is so comfortable with it. And the other issue is, the one issue is that if they put all their respawn, if LGD decides, okay, we're going to completely like take Undead out of the map, can Kami pick up the slack a little bit? Because we know Eileen and Shy, they both like have their moments where they can pick up the slack, but Kami, it's been hit or miss very much so throughout this season. More, I would say a little bit more miss than hit, but I think like I need to see from Kami, I need to see like that, like I'm going to take the pressure completely off Undead and I need to like carry myself because that might be the only way that they have back into this map or in this series.
I wouldn't be shocked to see Shy pull out of McCree. I just don't know how good it's going to be because we haven't seen it in a public setting. I wouldn't keep him to like a strict Widow Tracer narrative. I think that he probably, if the meta calls for it, they're going to have to swap him off of it.
Yeah.
It depends on if he's as good as he is on the Widow. I think that's the question there. I don't think if McCree becomes like a must pick, I don't think they'll just kind of run Widow just, because why not? They'll probably put him on McCree, and he's an unknown factor. Shy, we haven't seen on McCree that often, especially this season. But we have seen Undead on it historically and this season, so he's a very known quantity. So it's, the known versus the unknown. You kind of have to go in favor of the known there. So, yeah, Lingon, again, probably favorite too.
Live by the Undead, die by the Undead.
I think so.
Though. What do you guys think about DPS combination coming up? Maybe not specifically either teams, but I'm thinking pretty much either teams. McCree, Hanzo. We're talking a lot of spam damage from a corner. Both relatively mobile heroes that want to move a lot more. So you kind of get rid of the entire, well, my Widow is halfway across the map, can't help us. You have better vision for flashbangs, I even think. You have a very hard CC. You have two layers effectively of CC from your DPS heroes. Storm Arrow, I'm considering a CC.
It might as well be, yeah.
The best type of CC is your dead.
Yeah.
So does this combination come out if we do see the changes arise? Or do you think that Widow is just too important for us to kind of like full shift into non-scope sniper and like more close range combat?
I don't know if China would want to switch, like, because we're still seeing we're seeing China is like every time they try something different and it doesn't work, they're always like, okay, switch back to dive, Widow Genji. Like that's pretty much their.
I would say that they have a history of doing that, but I think as the season has progressed, they've been very comfortable on running like your solo Mercy comps. It's just,
it is a new patch though. That's like the one thing.
Exactly. And I think it's finding that semi-optimal composition early. And if your team just happens to not find that, or if they haven't been able to be exposed to that up until this point, which I would find very bizarre, that's when I worry. but you should have a good idea what you want to run, what other teams are running, just the way that esports, teams kind of practice. They just practice against their opponents, whether it be further down the line or normally they do a pretty good job of not practicing their opponent they're playing next week, but they have a good read on it's on the meta because they're practicing against their opponents. So they always bring out fairly similar compositions. Everybody has a style. You got Moss 7, you look at HTP, very, very different. But I think for the most part, whatever we do see should be similar across the board, and then we'll start to see adaptations throughout the rest of the playoffs. To Scr1be's point, will we see McCree Hanzo?
Why not at that point?
I don't know. It makes sense with the map pools.
Yeah.
Because you have some fairly tanky maps, so I could see like a Rhine or maybe even a Orisa, like a Orisa Hog, like super pick oriented comp where it's like we're going for halt hook combos, we're defending the backline with the tank or with the flashbang. We have Hanzo for poke, we have halt drag, we have a ton of different ways to synergize around that. So it's going to be like a very slow, methodical siege style. I could see that. I could see, skipping the Orisa, going with the Rhine Zarya with Hanzo, McCree. I could see that. I guess my rebuttal back was, what supports do you think are going to be? Do you think if this changes things, what if any changes happen to the support meta? Do you think we see a ton of Mercy still?
No, I actually don't think we see Mercy at all.
Do you think Resurrection is that like? I think Resurrection is like, it's like one of those things where I think that's like the reason that character is stuck around. Like, I feel like that like mechanic specifically is the reason why Mercy is played as much as she is, because I think without Resurrection she's kind of a heal bot, which isn't like a bad thing, but it's like you lose a lot of the utility from her and a lot of like a lot of the kind of just like, we can make a mistake, right? If you are not playing with a Mercy, mistakes are basically limited to 0, because then you get like one pick and it's probably like very difficult for you to do anything. It's why we see Goats comps sometimes. When Goats comps comes out and you don't have that Mercy and there's like a pick on the Lucio or the Moira, pretty much the comp dies because you don't have that. You can't get that person back. There's no resurrection and everything.
You just lose a lot of steam.
Yeah, you just lose all your steam. So if Mercy's out of the meta, then I think Widow stays, because Widows offers you that pick potential from a distance. Right, because a lot of the time we see like, Widow gets the first pick on a map. That's the resurrection. They're back in. It's still 6v6. But now, if Mercy doesn't get played and Widow is still being played, then you don't have the resurrection, and Widow can just completely pop off and just destroy teams easier than it was before.
I wonder if you actually go greedier there. And that's kind of like I was thinking about this. Why not go back to the old tried and true Zen Lucio combination? No, the big reason why I wonder if this would work is mainly because the way I'm theory crafting, right? Mercy is good in the fact that, like, yes, I think Res is good, and I think it's really good when your team's more spaced out. I think that Mercy gets a lot of like one mobility from GA by your team being relatively spaced out. I think you get safer reses if your team is spaced out, just because if you do get a pick in the backline, she's able to move more effectively there. She's able to find a lot more corners. I think if you run kind of like more of that very like brawly kind of like shield battle, I think that you want to activate your tank a little more. I think, let's say you run like Diva Rhine as a combination there. Maybe Zarya is a good combination, I think, for like then for setting up specific government surges. But I feel like you want to compensate for like a lot of other factors also. Like, for example, you want to compensate for a fact like, let's say we're running Zarya, how do we really contest Widow very effectively? I think that like Hanzo and McCree should be able to, but let's say you just have that terrible matchup where it's a long sight line, you really can't break it as well. You need ways to kind of like get your team in through chokeholds a lot safer. But using kind of like the Reinhardt and Diva and using the Lucio more as a movement ability, I think you're going to a lot of spam battles. You're going to get a lot of great picks with Discord Orb, and more importantly, you kind of cycle through a lot of ultimates a lot better with the knowledge your team is extremely mobile. I think that having Sound Barrier and Transcendence and spacing those ultimates out very well, and basically having like one after another being available, I think it activates your mobility a lot more. Like you basically just kind of like give your McCree the ability to kind of almost have a moving Deadeye, with the fact that they can't hide behind shield for very long. If the Hanzo's acting.
Okay, I could see that being a thing.
So let me riddle you this then, because I'm following.
We've got time for like one more
logic
riddle
going.
here.
Yeah, exactly. Like... One more kind of ponder.
Theory crafting. Yeah.
If if I'm understanding the way that you want to run Hanzo, in that same sense, couldn't you run Roadhog as well and just have more of a pick potential to like very similar to like what MLG Vegas kind of meta was, where it was like that 3-3 Rhine, random flex tank, Roadhog, either soldier, and it's like a lot about posturing and looking for a pick and shield wars. Do you think that could be where we're headed? If in that sense, if it's Hanzo, whether it's Roadhog, do you think that's a similar meta that could be, put into playoffs here? Is that kind of where you're going?
My big worry about that is that if you do run into double sniper, which is so strong, or double hit scan, Roadhog is very, very hit or miss.
Yeah.
It's even. Okay. I feel like if you charge ultimates too much, and with Hanzo being so able to get Dragon Strikes, I think the Dragon Strikes in terms of clearing point or clearing choke points is actually one of the most versatile ultimates. Because I don't even think of it as there's a lot of damage in it, but let's say, for example, you want to stop reinforcements. Firing it through the gate at King's Row is insane because basically no one can run through that.
It's like a 5-second just.
And Hog ult isn't that useful. It doesn't offer the same value. It's kind of because Hog ult you actually have to physically stand there and shoot, right? With Hanzo ult you can just all right, I shot it, forget about it, I can readjust. But Hog, you have to be in there, right? You have to just be there. Mm-hmm. You're not getting.
It also goes through walls.
Yeah, that's yeah. So I guess ultimate, like Scr1be is saying, I think Dragon Strike is a very, very good ultimate, especially with the charge rate and just with Stormbow, and I think that's a pretty good point. But
if someone runs it, credit to me.
Well, okay.
No,
if someone,
that's all you.
If someone runs it, tweet at Scr1beOW with a 1 instead of the I.
Prophet Scr1be.
Prophet Scr1be. Tweet at him. Tell him he's right. Tell him he's one of the best analysts we have right now. But that's all we have time for today. Thank you guys for joining me. It was great to talk about these Chinese contenders playoffs. Hopefully that you guys got a little bit of a preview of what you're going to be seeing on these next games. And again, we're brought to you here by Broadcast.gg. It's the first episode of PodcastGG. I hope we'll be able to make more if you guys like them. We're just a group of, pros, amateurs, semi-pros, just a whole mishmash of people. And we give you the tools that if you want to become a caster, analyst, host, producer, just anything you want, we're here to help you. So definitely check us out on Twitter. Like I said before, DOT, broadcast.gg, or else KT will kill me. And then make sure to join our Discord. We're all very helpful there as well. So definitely, be there for that. Just to give you the times for when these games are going to be on Broadcast.gg's Twitch. We're going to have the first game at the quarterfinal. Game 1 is going to be at 5 a.m. I think at 5 a.m.
I would assume so. That's
5 a.m. EDT. Yeah, we've been waking
season.
up. Yeah, we've been waking up early in the morning. 5 a.m. EDT, and then the second game will be at 7 a.m. EDT, and then the next day, same time. So Saturday and Sunday. Make sure to get here for those playoff games. It's going to be a great one. Thank you, Scr1be and Volamel, for being here with me. I thought we had some really great discussion. It was really fun to talk to you guys about it. I can't wait to see what these playoffs are going to be holding. Do you guys have any closing remarks?
Not really. Just happy to have the opportunity to come chat with you guys and cast the English side of Chinese contenders. It's been really fun. I probably will be absent for the quarters, potentially the semis. We'll see what happens, but hats off to the BroadcastGG crew. They're gonna kill it. Definitely tune in, all that good stuff. I'm sure Scr1be may or may not be on the desk. I'm not too sure about his availability. Go out there, go watch him.
Yeah, I'm excited. It's obviously a lot of fun to cover Chinese contenders just because it's a region that I think has always been underrepresented in Overwatch.
Definitely.
I think that there's been an over focus on Korean teams, but as you mentioned before, there's a lot of talent here, and I think that Korean teams are even recognizing this. This is kind of where the money is in esports. So Lucky Future Zen plotted this many eons ahead. So I can't wait to welcome our first all Korean Chinese team.
I can't. Yeah, it's gonna be great to see. So thank you guys for watching again. Make sure to follow our Twitters. They're probably going to be in the description of the video. Yeah, that's it. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time on Podcast.gg. Take care.